We want to jump into demographics, the causes of recessions, and talk a little bit about what might happen to the housing market in the future, of course, especially in regards to the aging in place concept and the issue of people who have these incredibly attractive mortgages. And my prediction is they won't want to give those up too easily. So that will cause the real estate market to be to really have a supply shortage, if you will.
Well, and it was funny, as we left off yesterday, we were talking about building up of Fed cutting rates and about some kind of economic slowdown and what it could mean. And I feel like we, or at least I, had left with a little bit of doomsday and a little bit of terror. And I want to hit on that to be able to talk about, well, it won't necessarily be as bad as we've seen in the past because of different factors and because of demographics. And I want to start with this slide here, which is, as we were talking about what are leading indicators, what are lagging indicators, the real answer is something has to trigger the downturn. It's not going to just happen by itself. And so I've just kind of gone through my mind and said, well, what are some things that could cause a downturn? And the two that stick out to me the most, I think we talked about a little bit yesterday, how long the federal funds rate has been so low and what kind of creepy, crawling, scary debts are in the, in the background that we don't know about.
Derivatives, student loans, auto loans. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. Corporate debt, secondary market, all of that.
Not a lot though, interestingly, on the real estate side, is there?
No, different than last time. Yeah. Some of the debt to income ratios of households are alarming to me in terms of allowing them to go 50% DTI pre-tax. That's a little scary, but that's more of, it won't cause the downturn. But if one of those two individuals lose their job, how are you going to service a 50% DTI? Yeah. So that creates different potential, but I don't think that's across the board systemic the same way it was during the last cycle.
Right, and I always like to give our listeners the definition for acronyms. They may not know DTI, debt to income ratio. So when you've got a borrower that's in a house and they're at, as Ali said, 50% debt to income ratio. So the debt amount is half of the income, right? And if it's a couple, for example, one loses their job, that's a problem. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And then the other thing that there's a whole list that your listeners will be able to see online, but the other one that makes me nervous is, we didn't talk yesterday about the fact that we are on the longest economic expansion on record. And everyone will tell you that doesn't matter in and of itself. But why that matters is if you're a consumer and you don't know that much about the economy, you just know that Yahoo News is telling you that this expansion has run for a really long time, you start to just get a little bit more uneasy about where's the market, where is it going, am I going to be buying at the top, should I be worried? And that almost creates its own self-fulfilling prophecy as people react to what they're seeing, not because there's actually a fundamental shift, almost that the consumers create the fundamental shift. So just a couple things that I've been paying attention to. I want to go then from whenever this recession will come, what can we learn from the past about what it means for the future? And so I've gone through the data, and I think this slide, you're going to challenge me, and don't worry, I do have local stats to talk about this. This is looking at what happens nationally to existing home sales during recessions. And so if you average it up, the Great Recession was a 50% drop in home sales. And I don't think anyone is forecasting that we'll be anywhere near the Great Recession in the future. That's your outlier.
Wow, that's incredible. So if you have 6 million home sales in a given year, you go from 6 million to 3 million, ouch, because all of the ancillary stuff, and your company knows better than anybody because a lot of people that follow you are not just real estate developers. They're all of the suppliers that supply appliances, that supply materials to those developers. So that has huge ripple impact on the economy, right?
Oh, yeah, that's such a good point. And it's also the broker, it's also Wayfair, it's also Target, because if people aren't buying homes, they're not buying new furniture, they're not buying new wall art. So yeah, that's such a good point. But then the average is a 25% drop from peak to trough. But We know it's a national number. We know that that's not going to tell you. That's kind of like the Case-Shiller number. What then have we seen for different markets? Now, this is looking at the sales. And the way that your listeners should view this graph is the top line is the best case for these given markets.
So this one's entitled, but the pullback is very market specific. Like I always like to say, Ellie, all real estate is local. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, and this gets even worse because this is just looking at the metro. If you go down to King County in Seattle, that's going to be different than the other counties that are there. So top line, best case in Seattle, during a recession, home sales went down 12%. Worst case in Seattle, home sales went down 60%. And the average is 45, but that average includes the Great Recession. So if I excluded that, it's not going to be that high. And that's why we try to show the range is you're never going to see that 60% drop again. But that maybe a 20% drop does feel more reasonable in that market.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you've got to adjust for the Great Recession, which was a 70-year anomaly, right? And think that it probably won't get that bad again necessarily in the next recession. Okay, very good.
Yes. Yep. And you can just see across the other markets. We show here Atlanta, Vegas, LA, DC, and it's basically showing you that the best case averaging out the past handful of recessions is a 10%. That really is across the board between 10 and 15%.
Okay.
Now, sales is one thing. The follow-up question is what happens with prices? And you know that you can't slap me yesterday and have me not bring up the data that we got in a debate with, was talking about the Case-Shiller data. And so you were saying it's not good, it's not accurate, and you were right, it's a national number and it's looking at different trends. So I did go and I pooled the year-to-date change in home price appreciation for different markets, and I looked at the growth for 2018, I looked at the growth compared to 2019.
Excellent.
So just if your viewers want a more local look, here's the stat. The most shocking, and the way this is sorted, this is showing two bars. It's showing year-to-date price growth for 2018, which is basically through May data, and then the same period, 2019. It's sorted by those 2018 numbers, and you can see this time last year, the average for San Jose price growth was 22%. And this year, the average is down 6%.
Okay, so 22% up, and then negative 6% in San Jose, Silicon Valley. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So you're not seeing, it's still not affordable. You have to go down like 60% for that market to even reach that. But you are seeing that correction that you had talked about yesterday.
Okay.
And then across the board, let me see if there's any that are growing. The only one that's growing is, and the little boxes, is Washington, D.C. But that's going from a 2% average last year to a 3% average this year. The rest of them are moving. LA down from 7% growth last year to flat this year. Another big mover was Denver, which we hit on yesterday, up 9%, now up 2%. So it goes back to that theme of growing but slowing, but you are seeing a little bit of a shift in overall pricing dynamics.
Yeah, I wonder what this would say with New York, because New York is really suffering, and I don't follow it closely, but I hear Miami is the same. I'm kind of surprised Los Angeles isn't a down number. It just says 0. But interesting.
Yeah, it is. And the New York data is always a little tricky because are you talking Manhattan or are you talking New York, including the New Jersey suburbs? Because Manhattan's definitely getting hit, especially at that high price point. But you are seeing still some of the attainable product in the New Jersey suburbs are doing okay.
Allie, just to take a little bit of a tangent here for a moment, you talked yesterday quite a bit, and you talked about lagging versus leading indicators, and I agree with you there about what to look at. You did a very good job pointing that out. But, even with the lagging indicators, they lag more than we think, right? Because real estate is a slow, I'll call it a slow reporting asset class maybe. And, you take, if you're looking at closings and the sales price of those closings, right? They've got the deal originates, then maybe 45 days later it closes. Then it records at the county recorder's office. And some of them are amazingly primitive and slow. And then, now they get data different places, so the county recorder isn't the only one, but that's one of them. And so, you're looking at a 90-day lag sometimes just to know that the deal occurred and what it closed for, right? Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and it's even worse if you're in Texas, which is a non-disclosure state.
Right.
So now they're going to estimate out those numbers over a long wait period. And so the number is helpful for builders who are trying to say, well, how much are people putting in options and upgrades, and where are we seeing that money spent? But to your point, that's maybe something has shifted since then. Maybe there has been a change in sentiment. Maybe if they were looking at the numbers in September, October, November last year, they're like, okay, well, there's still some room. There's still some positive growth. And that's when we know that the market really started to shift.
Right.
So you wouldn't have been able to pick up on, oh, wait, people actually aren't going to do 15% in upgrades to their home. They're actually really freaked out, and they may even want a discount. We may even need to incentivize them to keep buying with us.
That's why we need people like you to really tease out this data, because with the stock market, by comparison, it's real time. I mean, you get real time quotes of every stock and every index, which is it's just a much more perfect market than real estate. But that's why I think real estate has the better opportunities, because of the imperfection, right? The sophisticated people, the people with the information, the people in the know can really excel with their real estate investments, whereas stocks, the market is too perfected, and the perfection takes away the opportunity, interestingly.